What is a movie you find terrible, but critics seem to love it? People conflating movies that are popular with movies critics love. People seem to be using this list from Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes, how this list is weighted, seems to lean heavily to more reviews. So many reviewers you have never heard of can push Black Panther over, say, Casablanca. Girl on the third floor, I don't understand how this giant piece of cheese has 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Sometimes B-horror movies seem to only get reviews from die-hard horror fanatics, and this pushes their scores way up. Not me, but my dad. He absolutely hates Snowpiercer, but it's got fantastic ratings and a great director. Even after watching, he still just doesn't get into it. I'll admit the first time I watched it with him, I wasn't huge on it either, but I've rewatched it many times and it's one of my favorite films now. Edit. Holy cheese, this blew up. I'm glad I'm not crazy for not knowing what exactly to make of the movie. If you hated the movie on your first watch, I recommend rewatching, because it seems lots of people changed their minds after it. Aka Willy Wonka and the Apocalypse Train. Shape of Water honestly might have been a good movie to address the way humans treat creatures, but they ducked it up by having them fall in love. Like what, the actual duck? Yes, Ducking Nemo. Great movie. SpongeBob, Sponge Out of Water. Ducking 81% RT score with a 54% audience score. If you want a SpongeBob movie, watch the original 2005 movie. Infinitely better. I feel like this movie is way overhated on Reddit. Yeah, it's not the first, but I think it's some of the best SpongeBob related content since that movie, and it's a good time overall. American Hustle. One of the most boring movies I have ever watched. American Hustle, try Kung Fu Hustle instead. The Cantonese subtitles make it a beautiful day in the neighborhood, in my opinion. I feel Tom Hanks didn't accurately portray Fred Rogers at all. Rogers was in no way as eccentric as the persona portrayed by Hanks in the film, but was his own breed of human. The Rogers character portrayed by Hanks, especially with the portrayal of violence in a scene of the film set during a live broadcast of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, was in no way the real Mr. Rogers. The documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor was a far better insight into the life of Rogers. I thought it was an okay movie, but I agree that Won't You Be My Neighbor is superior. Part of the problem I had was that Tom Hanks is too recognizable, so it just feels like Tom Hanks dressing up in Fred Rogers clothes. I also felt like the focus on the guy was kind of ham-handed. I was hoping more for a film that made him Mr. Rogers more personable, while the film seemed to try to push hard on deifying him in a way. Won't You Be My Neighbor did a much better job making him a well-rounded person. Crash. Like, I challenge you to write a more pandering movie, but impossible character arcs and junior high-level storytelling is apparently Oscar-worthy if you spend enough money on bankable actors. Edit. Yes, critics generally like this movie Reception. I had an assignment back in school to watch Crash. I downloaded the movie and started watching. About 45 minutes in, when James Spader started doing weird sex things, I realized that wasn't the right movie. Shakespeare in Love. Yes, this. And why did it win an Academy Award over Saving Private Ryan and Life is Beautiful? Edit. Thank you for the award. Argo. Not because it was necessarily a badly made movie, but because it willfully rewrote real-world history to make America look like the sole heroes. The British and New Zealand embassies did not turn the American embassy workers away. The British embassy took them in, at great risk mind you, but transferred them to the Canadian embassy since they could more easily pass for Canadians, and the British embassy was in a dangerous location already. The New Zealand embassy took similar risks. The actual Americans who were rescued made extensive comments at the time stating displeasure over how the actual situation was depicted, since it was, well, bullshit. And don't get me started on U-571. At least that movie was a box office bomb it deserved to be, since it straight up replaced the British Navy, who recovered the Enigma machine, with the US Navy. They got so much heat over it that they just lazily shoved a disclaimer at the end saying pretty much actually it was the British Navy who captured the machine, but oh well, to save face. The bloody US wasn't even in the war when the events depicted happened. They freely admit that they could only get film financed if it was the US Navy and not the British Navy. There's some sad person out there who's gonna use this as a movie recommendation thread. TBH, I might check out Girl on the Third Floor and add a strap just because I've never seen them and quarantine's got me going bonkers. Shawshank Redemption. Nah, I'm kidding. That movie is amazing. It truly was a Shawshank Redemption. Bohemian Rhapsody. I love Queen, but this movie sucks. Rocketman was ducking amazing. The critics didn't really love it. Their reception was mixed and not high. The general audience seemed to love it though. Ralph Breaks the Internet. A disappointing sequel. This one crushed me because I absolutely love Wreck-It Ralph. The sequel was just a hot mess with too many references crammed in to appeal to the kids. A Star Is Born. I just don't get the hype. Almost no conflict in her rise to stardom and the ending seemed so predictable the closer I came to it that I had a hard time even finishing it. It was just boring. Ending seemed so predictable, probably because it's about the third or fourth time that movie has been remade, with original coming out in 1937. Classic Seinfeld isn't funny syndrome. You've already seen good chunks of it elsewhere, it's so influential. Crash. The Best Picture Oscar winner, for those asking. The one with Holly Hunter and James Spader? Duck, that was terrible. The one with Thandie Newton and Don Cheadle? Duck, that was terrible. Black Panther. I actually really liked Black Panther until it ended with that CGI fight scene. Had it ended with both of them losing their suits and duking it out at the proving grounds they fought at earlier, it could been considerably better. The Lion King remake. The CGI is absolutely gorgeous, I can't deny that. But going to hyper-realistic lions made the movie lose all of the charm the original had. There's a complete disconnect between the emotions the voice actors were going for and what the lions were showing, due to the fact that real cats/lions don't have a wide range of facial expressions to portray human emotions with. Other changes were made. Some were good, like fixing some plot holes, but for the most part the changes were bad. Removal of songs, toned down the magic, Beyonce butchering music. The fact is, was called it the live action remake is ridiculous. Waterworld, 1995. Oh wait, other way around. Ha ha ha. Same. Love this piece of chiz film. The Greatest Showman. Like it's about a awful person, but they make him seem like a good guy, plus the script and songs and everything about it was just mediocre, so when I watched it after all the praise it got I was just disappointed. I love that movie if I pretend it's not about P.T. Barnum, because it tries to portray him as a man ahead of his time, willing to stick his neck out to treat everyone like people. Except the real P.T. Barnum is remembered for saying there's a sucker born every minute, while also doing insane things like shipping in live whales for display in his circus, only to buy new ones every few weeks. When they died in the tiny tanks he somehow stuffed them in. Also, that midget in the movie, in real life it was his cousin, and he treated him like shiz, along with everyone else in his circus, because he was an a-hole. Happy Feet. What in the actual F? It was cute when the lead penguin was little, but then he outgrew the cute. I genuinely think that the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney is one of the worst movies that has ever hit the big screen. In IMAX 3D it's a very effective horror movie. The Irishman. Same gangster movie with octogenarian actor that we've seen 1,000 times before. But critics seem to eat that stuff up. I think the movie was overrated for sure, with people calling it a masterpiece, but I do think it's unfair to say it's the same old gangster movie. It's notably not that actually. It's not the crash burn movie we've seen in the past with Casino and Goodfellas, Scarface, etc. It's not the glamorous Godfather style movie either. I heard it said that it's an old guy movie. I think that's fair, even though I don't agree it makes it bad necessarily. It's just clearly not made with the same energy and perspective as your average gangster movie. Add a strap. Whole movie was a waste of time. Surprised I didn't fall asleep. The movie was visually stunning. I just didn't care about the characters. They really needed to show more than just tell us what was happening. A Star Is Born is so cringy. I can't understand why people raved about it. Just because they had good chemistry? I mean, yeah they did, but that's probably cause they either wanted to, or were sleeping with each other. Big whoop. The storyline was absolute garbage. So cheesy, weak and stereotypical. Can't believe two talented stars wasted their time on this, and then got rave reviews and awards. Edit, I meant the 2018 film. Also, till there were other movies by the same title. Haha. I feel young all of a sudden. 1937, 1954, 1976 or 2018. American Sniper Aka. This man murdered civilians, but he feels bad about it, so it's okay. US Army. Good. Edit, I'm vegan. Duck you if you eat meat, or if you are vegetarian. Remember Inglourious Bastards and its movie in a movie segment stalls their nation? You know, the propaganda film about Frederick Zala, the hero sharpshooter, which premieres towards the end of the movie. American Sniper is that film, only feature length, and in color. Titanic. I just don't get it. Most of the special effects are amazing. Some shots have too much of that 90s CGI look, but the actual movie was an extremely generic love story with nothing new. Well, the real star of the show was the boat. The love story was really to just get us on board, and to the sinking. People mentioning a bunch of popular 2000s and 2010s movies make me worried about my opinion. A Clockwork Orange. I've read the book, and watched the movie. I hated both. Isn't hate kind of the correct response to the subject matter in that case though? La La Land. Sorry mate, but La La Land ducking slaps. Dunkirk. I really wanted to like it, but I found the movie to be an absolute snooze fest. Like Gravity, I think it really worked on the big screen, but not on the smaller screen. I came out of the film a bit traumatized. It felt extremely tense throughout. Emo. Gravity is one of the worst movies I have ever seen because of its complete disregard of physics. It spit in Newton's face and chiz in his cereal. Bullock was great though. I'm a physicist and I thoroughly enjoyed Gravity. Yes, it gets physics wrong in some places, but it does other things really well. It's a movie, not a scientific paper. To each their own, though. I really didn't understand the love for A Quiet Place. It relied overwhelmingly on cheap jump scares. Ironically, the movie that everyone seemed to hate, Bird Box, was basically what I thought A Quiet Place should have been. Much more dread and horror, with minimal jump scares. Spoiler: the baby storyline took me out of the movie. You can't have a baby in this universe. Babies cry all the time for no reason. If you keep your baby in a soundproof box or artificially asleep all the time, that's going to severely hinder its development to the point where the child will not be able to communicate normally. Having a baby in the quiet place pretty much guarantees a child with severe disabilities if that child doesn't kill your entire family just by crying. For me, it's definitely The Last GD. It has 90 on Rotten Tomatoes, but I'd say it's one of my least favorite movies of all time. I agree. While some of it is really good, the pacing of it is just so weird. Plus that whole casino plot with Finn and Rose is completely useless and seems very out of place. The whole storyline on the ship is garbage and extremely boring. The only good part of the movie really are the interactions between Rey and Kylo. Toy Story 4. It breaks so many rules and is such an insult to the characters. The villain and her minions are really interesting, but lacks the threat of characters like Sid and the evil of Lotso. I guess that could be the point though. Kinda sad they didn't do more with her and her minions. Plus, Ducky and Bunny are more unfunny than minions. Yeah, like why is Buzz all of a sudden such an idiot? I don't remember him being that way in the previous movies. Pitch Perfect. Some of my friends made me watch that monstrosity. It has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Someone is Aka salty. Titanic. George Costanza said it best, so that old woman, she's just a liar. Toy Story 4. When it was first announced, I thought it was an unnecessary movie. After watching the trailers, I still thought it was unnecessary, and after watching the movie I realized I was correct, and this led me to hate the movie, because the trilogy had a perfect ending. By the way, How to Train Your Dragon 3 should have won the Oscar in Toy Story place. Peas. Sorry about my English, if I made any mistakes. It is not my language. I always say Toy Story 4 is more of an epilogue. It's not mandatory viewing. but it's alright if you're an avid fan of the series. It's not awful by any means either emo, just not necessary. Avatar. Story was definition lackluster. Visuals were amazing. Monsters Ball was horrible, but somehow won awards. Racist white man somehow overcomes racism enough to have sex with Halle Berry. I found Avengers Endgame really drawn out and boring. Just didn't hit home like the other movies. Bold statement on Reddit. Hold on, need to sharpen my pitchfork. Bird Box. A Quiet Place is somehow a better movie, even though they're almost exactly the same. The difference between A Quiet Place and Bird Box is how the monsters interact with the characters and the audience. With A Quiet Place, the audience feels compelled to hold their breath and words along with the characters, as well as the movie being able to successfully pull off having barely any sound, to add fear into the audience. With Bird Box, we can't interact as much. Are we supposed to close our eyes and ignore the movie? We really have no interaction with the movie because we can't feel immersed, if that makes sense. Not showing the monster works for the idea I guess, but it has no way of portraying the monster either. It's just a movie that should have stayed as a book. Tree of Life was pretentious dogches. Gravity was so full of scientific errors and illogical decisions every 5 minutes I couldn't enjoy it. Oh man, we are running out of oxygen. Anyway, tell me your life story. The movie was a snooze, but what made up for it for me was as the crowd was exiting the theater, it was just me and my ex, and a couple ahead of us sitting in the theater. After about 10 seconds of watching the credits, the guy ahead of us goes, "What? No blooper reel?" I couldn't stop laughing. Man, Lincoln was so ducking boring. My fav president, so I thought this will be cool. I was wrong. And Lincoln Vampire Hunter ruled though. Yeah, I don't really get why they ignored the whole vampire hunting part of his life in Lincoln. Adastrap, the Moon Pirates, the girl from Mars, who's never been to Earth, the way they managed to make a desperate fall to Earth with a torn parachute boring. Duck Brad Pitt and his I'm bored falling from space to Earth with a broken parachute. I wanna know why and how there are moon pirates. Also Drag Me to Hell. Psychological thriller Maya, it's jump scares galore and a woman who cold been rid of her problems. I don't care how much empathy you have for someone with mean parents. He kept screwing you over and you were literally going to be sent to hell. Survival instinct beats empathy for someone who was actively antagonizing you hours before. Sorry, the only thing salvageable in Adastra was the cinematography. They had some amazing underscore shots. Frozen. I hate the movie because the story is mess, the characters are boring to me, and hate the design of the trolls. I was really bummed out that the songs didn't follow the same folk style genre as that first song with the Ice Gatherers. I was expecting something more in line with the fairy tale, and it went pop music real fast. I wanted to like it, but Snowpiercer ended up being one of my least favorite movies I've ever seen. 100% those kids were eaten by the polar bear. Toy Story 4 should have stopped at 3. I completely agree on this one. It wasn't actually a terrible movie up until the end. Greater than sign exclamation mark. Woody leaving Bonnie to go live the life of a lost toy completely flies in the face of the message of the previous 3 movies, that toys are there for their kids no matter what. And Bonnie discarding Woody, not wanting to play with him anymore, made and is giving him to her pointless. Woody should have just stayed with Andy. They belonged together. I really wanted to see Andy par Woody down to his son/daughter. And now Woody and Buzz will probably never see each other again. Either way, the ending made me mad. The way I think of it, the first 3 Toy Stories made me cry sad tears. 4 made me cry angry tears. Avengers Endgame seemed to be loved by both critics and the general public. I thought it was awful, especially compared to Infinity War. I just found the plot to be a bit rubbish, especially bringing back a different version of Thanos that didn't have the same effect as the one from Infinity War. I'm of 2 minds about it. It doesn't flow as well as Infinity War. Thanos is no longer interesting, and some characters like Hulk and Hawkeye feel wasted, or like they are trying really hard to do something with them but it amounts to nothing. On the other hand, Stark and Cap's arcs were perfect, especially Tony. I was amazed that they were finally able to end his character after I felt so burned out with him for like 3+ movies. but yeah, Infinity War was better for sure. Pretty much every single Marvel movie. I simply don't understand how these movies are so popular. Marvel movies don't really strike me as an example of movies that critics seem to love. Lol. Joker. It's meh at best. Critics gave Joker pretty meh reviews. They were generally positive, but they didn't love it. The live action Lion King. My daughter got so bored that she got up halfway and went to take a bath instead. Pretty much every movie by Woody Allen. These pretzels are making me thirsty. The Last Jedi. It's the chistiest Star Wars movie of all time. To me, The Rise of Skywalker was leagues worse edit. This is the most civil discussion I've ever had about the sequel trilogy. Thanks to everyone for bringing up good points for each movie. Us. I really enjoyed Get Out, so I was really excited for this movie, and it just fell completely flat for me. I feel the same. Immobiile rushed the film and the studio gave him too much money/control because Get Out was so excellent. Us is a visually great film, but the script needed a few more drafts to really clarify the messaging/metaphors, something that Get Out did very well. Us was messy, really inconsistent tone also. As a person who has struggled with addiction, I find Requiem for a Dream to be a monstrosity of over-sensationalized fantasy. It doesn't tell the story of an addict, it tells a story seemingly concocted by a dare officer who has never even thought to consider the actual emotions involved in addiction. By contrast, I find the film Trainspotting to be a much more grounded and honest look at the life and struggle of an addict. This is all based on my own personal experience, of course. Check out Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling. He plays a teacher who is a crack addict. Very grounded and arguably has Gosling's career best performance. I really hated Call Me By Your Name. I found it incredibly pretentious and honestly not particularly well written. Felt like I was watching a postcard, only that it was pretending to be some great novel. In fact, and I don't say this lightly, since taste is subjective, I found it so bad that I came to suspect a large portion of favorable reviews were written just to not go against the overblown hype around the movie and out of fear of seeming unsophisticated for not having understood this masterpiece. I thought this movie was super drawn out and didn't really enjoy an adult having a relationship with a teenager. I don't care what sexual orientation it is. At one point the man leaves and the kid literally has to call his mom to pick him up. What the duck? Edit. Wow. A lot of people got really pissed off about this. I admit I didn't know the age of consent in Italy, but that doesn't mean I don't understand things outside my own context. Even with it being within the age of consent, it still seemed like grooming emo. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I understand why some people would hate it, but I absolutely loved it. I can't tell you why I loved it. I have no idea what I enjoyed about it specifically, but I loved it. Frozen. My god, this movie. I have grown up with Disney my whole life. I adore Disney, but I ducking hate this movie. So much license taken with the original fairy tale that most people don't even know what it's based on. Anna is considered the main character, even though Elsa clearly is stronger, better, and more interesting. Also more deserving of sympathy and compassion. I wanted her to run away forever and find her power out in the wilderness, and instead, she has to come back and save her dumber sister from her own stupid choices. She deserves so much better in life. And I hate that the music is so damn catchy. Damn you, Disney. But the whole point was that she can't just run away from her problems to make them go away. She kinda, you know, froze the whole town, so she had some cleaning up to do. Backdoor Sluts 9. I feel like the directors really hit their stride when you get to the 37th and 38th installments. Black Panther. I just watched it for the first time and thought it fitted in as a pretty standard Marvel movie. Nothing spectacular, nothing awful. Out of curiosity, what didn't you like about it? Ender's Game. Sure, it works fine as a standalone movie, but as a huge fan of the book, I found it butchered the storyline, and although I was so excited to see the movie, seeing them replace Alley with Beam Ignoring the significance of the dragon army and forget entirely about Ender's brother and sister was too much to let me enjoy the movie. God, I hate that movie so much. God, I hate that movie so much. Luckily, I think the critics agree with you on this one. It may be technically fresh, but it's only a few percent points away from being rotten. Lucy, you know the Scarlett Johansson movie with Morgan Freeman, where she gets drugs into her blood stream accidentally after being forced to become a drug mule, and she later becomes some omnipotent entity using 100% of her brain power. It was the worst movie I've ever seen outside of the Avatar: The Last Airbender film. It's not critically acclaimed. Or the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I liked, and still do like, The Force Awakens. It wasn't a perfect movie by any stretch, but it was going interesting places, and I liked the characters. Then The Last Jedi took everything decent from it and threw it in the garbage. The newer Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. I haven't been a Depp fan since he started doing the Pirates movies, but I think Tim Burton needs a different crew to cast in his movies. I know this one is closer to the book than the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka movie, but the Wilder movie is so much more memorable and had much better songs in it. I'm also tired af with all the reboots and just want a movie with an original story. Probably Grandpa Joe's idea. What a leeching scumbag. Birdman. One of my favorite memories is around Birdman. My brother had a barbecue at my parents' house when it came out on Blu-ray, so he decided to get the film so him and his friends would have a fun superhero flick to watch. He ignored me every time I said it's not a superhero film, so I decided to join him and his friends watching it because I wanted to see their reactions, and it only took 15 minutes for them not to disappoint. He says it's his biggest film disappointment to date. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Mother. Not only was it horrible, it was ducking traumatizing. Seriously, 3 of us went, and we all came out emotionally scarred. Once I got over that, it's just boring and super ham-fisted religious allegories. This was a problem with the marketing for the film more than a problem with the movie itself. Anyone familiar with the director, Darren Aronofsky, knew exactly what to expect. He's never made a movie that wasn't aimed to traumatize the audience, except arguably The Wrestler. Personally, I loved it, and I love movies that make me feel like I've been run over by a train. But this was not a movie that should have had such a wide release. It's an art house film. The audience deserved to know what they were in for in advance, because it's not an experience everyone wants. Lady Bird was a super okay coming of age story. Acting was fine, but I don't get where all of the award season hype came from. 8th Grade directed by Bo Burnham was a better movie emo. Oh my god, 8th Grade was so ducking good. The Last Jedi. My major complaint was that it was just too long. There were many moments when they could have just ended the story and saved the next part for the sequel or whatever. There were many moments I thought for sure were the climax/climactic battles, like Kylo Ren stabbing Snoke or the Admiral Lady sacrificing the ship. But nah, they gotta go slog on and on and on. My favorite part of the new Star Wars is the character of Finn. I like that he deserts for moral reasons, but is still a survivalist who struggles with deserting again. I wish they had done more with him. The English Patient. Okay, Elaine. Avatar. I find it boring and a bad rip-off of Ferngully, which I loved as a kid. No rapping Robin Williams bad ruined Avatar for me. American Sniper is the only movie I've ever considered leaving the cinema during. Went to see it because it got so much praise. Guess me being European makes it a bit less impactful or something. The Greatest Showman. Bad singing from Hugh Jackman, and the story was offensively patronizing in terms of its portrayal of the disabled and those with disfigurements. I also disliked all the songs, even those that were well sung. Now the film isn't perfect, but I very strongly disagree on the bad singing. Hugh Jackman sounded amazing. Black Panther. Critics lost their chiz over that movie. Honestly, not to be that guy, but I think the race card was played a lot in the reviews. Like, to me a hero is a hero, no matter what race. However, they seemed to overhype up that this one is black and not really pay attention to the movie itself. I thought it was not that good and really predictable. A Star is Born, the new one. I'm a fan of Bradley Cooper in other films, but I find him unwatchable in this one. I started and resumed watching 3 times and I don't think I'm halfway through it yet. I couldn't even understand what he was saying most of the time. He mumbled so much. Silver Linings Playbook was pretty garbage. Saw it for the first time a couple of weeks ago. Started off bored then became a bit interested until I saw it wasn't really going anywhere. Sappy cookie cutter ending completely ruined it. The Revenant. I don't get how LDC won an Oscar for one of his worst movies. I can't remember who he was up against that year, but they must have been bad. He's a great actor, but this movie was terrible. I swear at one point there felt like a 30-minute gap before the next person spoke. Agree to disagree on the quality of the movie. It had incredible cinematography. There's a battle scene early on where they get ambushed by Native Americans. Amazing long take, and a great action sequence. As for the sparse dialogue, well, it's a movie about a guy stranded in the wilderness. After all, that story has to be told visually, and I thought it was a visually beautiful movie. I didn't think Leo was terrible, but it's definitely not his best acting performance. Moulin Rouge. I remember this being released when I was a kid, and there was a huge amount of hype and an Oscar bid for Best Picture. Watched it on a plane a few months ago, and it's just a goofy fever dream with a lot of modern music and a nonsensical plot. Moulin Rouge is my favorite movie. I've probably seen it over 20 times now. I've definitely noticed that people either are obsessed with it, guilty, or they hate it. The Last Jedi. Agreed. A lot of people whose opinions I respect loved it. A lot of idiots didn't like it for having POC women and women with pink hair in it. I find myself hating it, not because of politics. I just thought it was a poorly made, confusing mess of a film. I always get a lot of flack for this, but I absolutely despise Gravity. Here's a film that espouses the theme of survival against all odds and never giving up, and yet the main character not only flounders like a fish out of water most of the time, she literally gives up halfway through and tries to duck and kill herself. The only reason she doesn't is because she hallucinates that George Clooney's ghost shows up and uses his 15 minutes of screen time to tell her not to give up after she already has. Then she miraculously makes it back to Earth somehow and gets to starve to death on a beach somewhere in the tropics. And everybody raves about how much of a strong female character she is and how brave her depiction is. I hate her acting. It's abysmal and I can't imagine how anybody could think it seemed genuine. I hate the obnoxious amount of time spent on CG girders flying through space, and most of all, I hate how everybody loves it so it won. Thus if I try to make the argument that she is not a strong female character, she is a very poorly written weak female character, especially when compared to other strong female characters like Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley. Everybody tells me I'm sexist or chauvinist because I don't like a movie rant. Not sure where the flack is coming from. I think this is a standard Redditor position. Citizen Kane is often called the best movie ever made. Meh. It was influential, but it's not meant to be the best movie ever forever. Boyhood. What a snooze fest. Deleted. I'm gonna piss all of you off, but Baby Driver is just average. It was fun and well directed. It was not perfect, but Edgar Wright gets a par. The Irishman lacked continuity and the CGI of making characters younger was not believable. But hey, it's Scorsese. Let's eat his bumhole. The Thin Red Line. Considered a classic by many and a part of the Criterion Collection. I gained nothing from watching it and was bored for the entire 3-hour runtime. Really? I have to completely disagree. Each member of the cast played their role perfectly, the cinematography was beautiful, and the movie portrays a struggle with war and soldiers just wanting to get away from it all. It has a real personal element, and has to be by far the best Pacific Theater war movie. Captain Marvel. I'm all for women being strong and awesome. As a lady, I do actually want this, but Captain Marvel is completely uninteresting as a character. She doesn't grow or develop in any way, and she's so powerful that it doesn't matter that she's a stuck-up a-hole. But for some reason she's our image of women's empowerment in movies. Ugh. Les Miserables. I don't understand the hype surrounding this movie. I think the movie itself was fine, but the acting was astounding, and for the most part the vocals were really amazing, since they were done live, and you could experience more emotion. I'm not saying it is perfect, but I'm saying that the I Dream Daydream scene is a masterclass in acting, singing, and one-take scenes. The Blair Witch Project 1999 never got what all the hype was about. It's the first found footage shaky cam horror movie. It came out when most people still had dial-up internet. A lot of people thought it was real. Under the Skin. It's not a super mainstream entry, but I just hate it. The director basically got the rights to this amazing book, took the basic premise, and made a movie that hits not one single mark that the original work touched on. The book, I would argue, is barely adaptable, that as it is, but because this movie got such rave reviews I'd say it's extremely unlikely that we'll ever see another adaptation of it. If anything, it feels like they just acquired the rights, so they could use the basic premise, strange spooky woman picks up men in her car, and make their own movie, while using the same title. Furthermore, I found it boring. Some interesting visuals but extremely boring. This happens all the time with adaptations in the film industry. I happen to love Under the Skin. It's a beautifully told story. I've never read the book, though. Dunkirk, the most boring war film I've seen in my life. And I'm not saying that because there weren't any big battle scenes, because Jarhead is the same way and I consider that a great film. The difference between the two is that Jarhead has characters that you get to know and care about. Meanwhile I can't even remember the name of even one character from Dunkirk. Dunkirk only got good reviews because it's a Christopher Nolan film. It's an awful, boring movie. It also had a weird multiple timeline thing going on that it didn't need, and only made the movie unnecessarily confusing. Disagree. The whole point of not knowing the characters is to emphasize how war was. There were no heroes, no individuals, you were all just cannon fodder soldiers designed to be drones. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.